the most bizarre and brutal series of crimes in America.
Sally, I hear something. Stop! Stop!
This is the movie that is just as real. The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Kakuranger, ninja.
Welcome everyone, I am the Kaiju no Kami, and today I have a very special review of Shout Factory's latest release, Ninja Sentai Kakuranger. While Dairanger was based on Western mythology and Dairanger was derived from Chinese lore, Ninja Sentai Kakuranger is centered on Japanese mythology. It tells a story about a group of ninjas who act as descendants of legendary ninjas told in folktales battling yokai or Japanese ghosts. And no, these yokai are not like the ones you see here. Now, unlike Dairanger, Kakuranger is very episodic, with only 25 of its 53 episode run actually dealing with the plot. Fortunately, nearly every episode is highly enjoyable and energetic thanks to its rich cast of characters. The show is essentially broken up into two large story arcs, the first being a little bit more lighthearted and goofy with an announcer that shows up on screen a few times an episode to either exposit to the audience or bid us farewell until the next episode. He is a delightful ragugo performer that is fun to listen to thanks to his actor Enjo Sanyute.
歯磨きとはトイレットペーパーを隠し合う歯磨きそうじゃない子供たちの姿がある日突然煙のように消えてしまうのであります
Rakugo is a form of storytelling using only a piece of paper and a cloth while sitting on a stage of sorts. The second half of the show loses the announcer and becomes a lot more serious with tones that mimic those found throughout Dairanger. Kind of? It still has its silliness, but it is toned down quite a bit. Nevertheless, the show really knows how to balance the two, as you can have a moment like this. And then 8 minutes later, you get a scene like this. The Heroes. The series stars 5 rangers with poor fashion sense who act as our heroes throughout the majority of the show.
Ninja White,
Ninja Red, Ninja Black, Ninja Blue, Ninja Yellow,
Tsurahime started her quest as a member of a trio of girls called the Punishment Sisters.
お仕置きセーラーシスターズだぞ
許しがたい天に代わってお仕置きよ I am Sailor Moon and now in the name of the moon I'll punish you
うざいうざい
From there, she leads the Kakurangers in the struggle against the yokai while dealing with her own amount of issues, such as having the burden of being the team leader among other things that occur during the second half. Sasuke starts off as a character that only wants to have fun and not be a ranger, but then grows up as the series progresses. For example, at the end of the first arc, the rangers have to be split up in order to find new scrolls which will give them new powers. The first episode of the arc features Sasuke's quest, and he gets frustrated at his companion he acquires, who says she is going to take him to the scroll, but she wants to have fun first.
いい加減にしろよ。お前の遊び相手をするためにここへ来たんじゃないんだぞ。
This is a complete 180 from the way he was in the beginning of the show. Jiraiya is also given a lot of great moments to shine throughout the show, and he ends up being my favorite character because he is an interesting one. He comes to Japan from America and knows very little Japanese at the start.
Everyone, the scroll's over there.
He clearly learns the language as he begins to speak in Japanese throughout the show's progression. Not only that, but he has some of the best fight scenes found throughout the show, along with a truly magnificent two-parter during the search for his scroll in the second arc. What occurs is not only badass, but touching at the same time as you really feel for him. Also, if you did not know this before, Kane Kosogi is the one who plays Jiraiya, and he is from various movies such as Godzilla Final Wars, and he played Ryu Hayabusa in that travesty of a Dead or Alive movie. Also, his father was an American actor from Los Angeles, so that's pretty cool, giving him the whole American flavor. Unlike that other Ninja Sentai show. Unfortunately, like a lot of these series, the Yellow and Blue Rangers are left with underwhelming development. They do grow throughout the series as well, but not as much as the other three. Hell, the episode that has them looking for their scrolls has the duo together as the scrolls are in the same vicinity as each other, so neither one of them gets to truly build up their character individually. Also, a lot of Sekai's episodes deal with him trying to impress some girl, which does get slightly annoying at times. Saizo has a lot of goofy moments too, but his episodes also tend to feature a really cool yokai with some great choreography. There's not too much else I can say about these two, as nothing truly is learned about their pasts.
All in all, it's just another brick in the wall.
The Ranger suits are a little bit basic compared to the Dairanger and Dairanger suits, yet they work so well with the ninja theme. I love that the necks are the same color as the suits and helmet, although it is funny to think about how brightly colored ninja suits can really do anything stealthy.
Go ninja, go ninja, go! 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 Go! Villains, you better run and hide, because one day you might not slide.
Our heroes have two companions to help them out throughout the course of the show. First is a drunken swordsman named Sandayu, who acts as their mentor.
この3つが揃って初めて大魔王に勝てるんよ。
The other is a cat bus named Nekomaru. Finally, there is one more hero of sorts named Ninja Man. He was put into a bottle and banished from Earth 1,000 years ago as punishment for a crime he was tricked into committing. I definitely recommend checking out the book Ninja in a Bottle, especially if you like the author's previous work Indian in the Cupboard. Upon returning, he is united with the Rangers and helps them save the Earth from the Yokai menace. Also, he has a secondary form he transforms into when he is mocked, deemed Samurai Man.
青二歳に何ができる？
それを言っちゃおしまいよ。健在。
Ninja Man is voiced by Kazuki Yao. You may be familiar with a few of his other characters such as Togan in Pokemon, Gaston in Berserk, Judao in Gundam Double Z, and Frankie in One Piece. Also, he was featured as Dr. Z in Akiba Ranger.
イリュージョン帝国から追放する。そうだ。これでいい。これでいいのだ。
The villains. As I said before, the villains are Japanese ghosts known as yokai. The interesting thing about this show is how dynamic the yokai are throughout it. For the first 12 episodes, it seemed like they are just working independently from each other outside of hanging out in clubs.
私は世界一強い妖怪なのに週刊妖怪に発表される強い妖怪ベスト10で3位以上になったことがないだから悔しくて悔しくて
Then the rest of the first act and the opening bits of the second feature their Prince Jr., also known as Gasha Dokuro, who is a badass skeleton clad in black leather for his human form, while half of his monster form is in army colors. It really brings a unique flavor to his character for both of his forms, which is also topped by an excellent performance done by Kenichi Endo, who was featured in an episode of Battle Fever J back in '79 and was in Lion Maru G. You may also recognize him from various movies such as Azumi, The Great Yokai War, Cromarty High, and One Missed Call. Junior is hands down my favorite Sentai villain of all time, and while he is not in the show for more than a quarter of the series, his presence brings a special flair to the show like no other Sentai series out there thanks to scenes like this.
奥へ行って仲間が来るのを待ってるのね。グッバイ地雷や。私がやられるなんて。父上。
Completely different from the way he was portrayed in Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, isn't he? Yep, and if you didn't guess it by now, Kakuranger is what became the third season of that. Upon Junior's end comes his father and the ruler of the Yokai army, Daimao. Daimao may seem like he is just a figurehead emperor like most Sentai series have, but in reality, he battles the Rangers not once, not twice, but 3 times throughout his stay, which is really amazing considering how big and bulky his costume is. While I was saddened to see Junior go so soon, Daimao also adds something to the show as the villains never get tiresome, yet are developed enough to give them their own personality. There are many other villains such as the Flowery Konoichi Gumi. This is a group of female ninjas, each named after a flower, and they serve as Junior's lieutenants first, and then Daimao after his demise. These girls also help the show keep up with variety as they always feel necessary to the show when they are on screen without feeling like they are forced in just for the sake of it. It is pretty refreshing to have such great potential used properly. Daimao brings his own soldiers too, with a samurai by the name of Haku Menro. This warrior is also used sparingly and yet helps drive the show without becoming redundant or annoying. There's so much more I want to say about this character, but it goes into too much spoiler territory. The foot soldiers are known as the Dorodoros. They look kinda like Kadamas with the warped 3-hole faces that they constantly tilt sideways. The Yokai army itself are a pretty impressive bunch, with many of them having truly awesome looking designs. Some of my favorites include the Oni brothers, Amakiri, Nui, Nine-Tailed Kitsune, Karakasa, Lantern Navis, and Yuki Onna.
Let it go, let it go. Can't hold it back anymore. Let it go, let it go. Turn away and slam the door. なぜだ?
Sadly, the one aspect they do fail in is when they grow big. In Dairanger, Bandora would use her staff to make the monsters grow, while in Dairanger, the Gorma had specialty bombs. Here, the monsters just call out gigantism, and a cloud that is swelling up the hate of humanity shoots down lightning and they grow. There's nothing inherently wrong with it, it's just kind of bland compared to what the series before Kakuranger did. Oh, and there is a doctor named Dr. Yagami who helps out Junior give upgraded weapons to the Yokai.
四天童子、わしの発明した武器を受け取れ。
The Mecha. If you like mecha, this show is for you as it is filled to the max with it. That doesn't mean we have 20 different machines piling on top of each other. There is just a lot of it to be found. Ninja Man can actually be considered a mech despite having his own personality. In fact, like Dairanger, the mecha of this show are also sentient beings.
翼丸が心、隠れ大将軍が技、無敵将軍が体。
First off, we have Muteki Shogun, which is compiled of 5 humanoid machines that merge into what looks like a walking Japanese castle. One thing I love about him is how big and menacing he looks. Also, I love the Japanese-styled friezes he has on his shoulders, and his sword hilt is also one. Then we have Kakure Dai Shogun, which are 5 animal mecha that merged into a really unique looking machine. Kakure Dai Shogun really stands out from the designs of the past due to how curvy and angular he is. I adore how much these two really complement each other, as they are 2 totally different designs. In case you did not notice, the mecha represents the animals that the Rangers are symbolic to, which often relates to their character's lore. For example, Tales of Jiraiya state that he rides on a toad, which is why his anemo is one. Next up is Tsubasa Maru. which is essentially a falcon that combines with either Shogun to form a super mode. Super Muteki Shogun gains a set of artillery from the bird's wings, while Super Kakureidai Shogun can fly, which enforces his final attack through speed. Finally, we have the Jusho fighters, which are more agile versions of the mecha that makes Muteki Shogun. These machines were an interesting aspect, but they just kind of come out of nowhere without any explanation. Then they just disappear during the fight with Junior at the end of the first arc. Honestly, they're kind of pointless as they feel tacked on as if they're just there to sell toys. They're cool in concept, but it's one of the show's biggest negatives as far as execution goes. Episodes. My favorite episode of the series is episode 20, The Flowery Kunoichi Gumi. This episode starts off with Sasuke having to save a child from a killer car. Who then finds himself being hunted by the Flowery Kunoichi Gumi while having his abilities to transform and call his cohorts blocked. This episode is pretty awesome as it shows how worthy Sasuke is to the Red Ranger legacy, as he is willing to put his entire life on the line to save this child. We also get to see some pretty wicked choreography as Sasuke wields Muteki Shogun's flaming sword throughout the fight, adding even more badassery to his name. As for my least favorite episode, well, that one is a little bit hard to choose because there is a throwaway episode during the second half of the show that features the return of the announcer. Fortunately though, it gives Sanyutei a nice send-off and his personality is a pleasure to watch, so it isn't that one. No, my least favorite episode is actually the huge one. I do not know why, but I just hate this episode a lot. It doesn't seem like it is any less silly than some of the other episodes, and yet I never find myself looking forward to this episode at all when I watch the series as a whole. The plot revolves around how easygoing Sekai is because he is not taking his job seriously. A monster gets into his stomach and forces him to eat constantly, causing him to grow enormous.
Your butt is wide, well mine is too. Just watch your mouth or I'll sit on you.
The implementation into him growing into a giant is already dumb enough, but the worst part comes from Tsurahime, who transforms herself into a hamburger to try and get him to stop eating things. Effects and music. The effects and music are both really good. The music is done by Kawamura Iji, the same person behind Dairanger and Kamen Rider Black, so a lot of its tunes are straight out of those shows, especially in the beginning. Nevertheless, the music in the show is well done and really helps to pump up the action. The opening and ending themes are very catchy too. Speaking of which, those poor Dorodoros, they're just minding their own business, dancing when the Rangers come in and start trying to run them over with their bikes. Very unprofessional, guys. The effects continue to impress despite some of them being blatantly fake. You can tell a lot of the times when something is superimposed, and the CGI used for Ninja Man's transformation to Samurai Man is pretty bad. Nevertheless, the majority of the effects are really well done and continue to highlight what makes this one of the best Sentai series out there, as the show makes up for its low points with its incredible design, storytelling, and choreography that the little nitpicks are irrelevant. The DVD. Shout Factory's DVD is pretty much what you'd expect by now. It uses the same discs as Toei's discs, so everything in the audio and video department is identical. Those of you who do not like yellow subs will be happy to know that the subs are white here. Unfortunately, not everything is perfect though, as there are a few misspellings, grammatical errors, but worse, a lot of the subs have not been timed properly. There are a couple of instances where a character will finish saying a quick phrase or sentence and then the subs will pop up. Episode 5 had it the worst, with a sentence showing up after the dialogue was completed.
なんだそりゃ。迷路から出てきた時、変な男がくれたのよ。この敵は
Isn't a make or break situation, as usually it is only off by a fraction of a second, but I do wish Shout Factory had paid a little bit more attention to this detail. The movie. Finally, just like with Dairanger, Shout Factory was unable to acquire the license to the movie, which isn't surprising, but still disappointing. The movie features a couple of kids being terrorized by two yokai whose boss wants their house for his collection, but he is unable to acquire it due to an ancient statue.
もしもし
I'm your boyfriend now, Nancy.
The movie fits between episodes 9 and 10 of the series, but honestly, it is pretty terrible. There really isn't a standout moment compared to the Dairanger movie, and there is nothing memorable to be found here. In fact, if I counted this as a regular TV episode, this would have easily made the huge one look like a masterpiece. While it is disappointing to not have it included, you are not missing a single thing from not watching this. The biggest issue I have with this is that it is just downright boring. Overall, Kakuranger rounds out as my second favorite Sentai series of all time. If you were not a fan of Dairanger or Dairanger, you might have an issue getting into this because it shares a lot of similarities with those shows. Nevertheless, the characters are great from both sides of the spectrum, heroes and villains. The choreography is some of Sentai's finest. It was also nice to see that Toei tried something new with the mecha in experimentation on that end. There are some negatives to the show, but they are so minuscule that they cannot detract from its enjoyability. I highly recommend Kakuranger, and I give it a 5 out of 5 grown-ups in spandex. These episodes are just a blast to sit through. I can't recommend them enough. Join me at the end of the year as I will be reviewing Dairanger hitting stores from Shout Factory in November. Until then, bye.
Dance, magic dance. Dance, magic dance.